My name is Andrew Metrick. I'm a professor of finance at the Yale School of Management. And with me is...
I'm Junri. I'm the academic director for the MMS Systemic Risk program.
And welcome to our webinar this morning, where we're going to be talking about our program and answering some questions that people have posted to us. Anytime during the webinar, you can ask an additional question. We have somebody here who will take that question and give it to us. But luckily, we have a bunch of questions that have been submitted in advance. And June and I'm the faculty director for the program. June is the academic director. And we've broken up these questions so that we can take turns and each get a breath between answering. So without further ado, let me go ahead and start. And again, feel free to post any additional questions during the webinar that may come up. Okay, so the first question that we have here is, how much work experience do you expect the incoming class would have had by the time they start the program? So we do expect this to vary a little bit. Certainly somebody should, I think, have a minimum of 2 years of work experience before they start the program. And I would expect that most people coming into the program will have somewhere between 2 and 5 years of experience. But I also think that we will have some people with significantly more than 5 years of experience. And that way, our program mirrors an MBA program, where most people are coming after their first or their second job. And in this case, it would be after your first or your second position within an institution. If you have any questions about your specific case, if you're concerned that you might have too much experience or that you have 2 years experience but it's not the right kind of experience, just send us an email, and we're happy to give you feedback on your specific case.
And I have a question where it says, when is the latest that you can submit the application for our program? Our application deadline is basically, we don't have a set deadline. It's on a rolling basis. So as applications come in, we review them in a bunch. We expect we will be looking at applications through probably up to the summer. So whenever you're ready, submit the application. Do not worry about deadlines. However, we do encourage people to submit as soon as possible, since we have a limited class size and we want our best applicants to be in that class. And if you have any questions and concerns about the deadline, again, just send us an email and we'll be happy to respond.
Thank you. Our next question is, what is an eligible institution, and does it include private institutions? So what we're looking to do in this program really is to help people get an educational background that will help them to do their jobs better at an institution that has some kind of systemic risk mandate. So clearly, the obvious ones there are central banks, but there are also other regulatory institutions. In the United States, we have the FDIC, for example. In Europe, there would be the Single Resolution Mechanism or the supervisory authorities that have systemic risk responsibilities. Now, if you're coming from a private institution, clearly there large banks, large insurance companies, other financial institutions are very concerned about systemic risk issues and might be interested in coming to the program. So there's no rule against that. Our concern is just that somebody who comes from a bank might not feel that the program that we were teaching was actually giving them the information that was most useful to them in their job going back. So basically, we're not going to be doing a whole lot in our required courses on how to do, for example, risk management within a private institution. Instead, it would be much more about how to think about risk management from the perspective of the regulatory authority. So we don't have a rule. There's no rule that says you have to be coming from an institution. We do want people who are coming in from their employers, where their employers are saying, we will take you back, and we're delighted to take you back when you're done. So if your employer believes that this is valuable for your future career at their institution, then by all means, you can apply. And if you're, as the typical answer that we'll give at the end of all of our answers here today, if you're wondering about your own specific case, just shoot us an email and we're happy to discuss it.
And I think that's a good segue to my next question, which is, does the program plan to provide placement services for the students? And the answer is basically no, since the purpose of our program is to take in these mid-career or junior level employees already who are in these eligible institutions and to help them advance their career within their institution. So we unfortunately will not be providing placement services for our students.
And thank you, June. And let me tie a bow around our last two answers and explain a little why we've taken this particular strategy. Because what we have is a one-year program. It would be very difficult if somebody is coming in looking to change careers or to find a new job. The way that recruiting tends to work in the master's degree world is that a lot of people will go into their second year of a two-year program already having done an internship where they want to get hired. And the other folks who are still looking will tend to do almost their entire job search. The busiest season will be in the fall. So if we were to be running kind of a placement operation and trying to put people into new jobs, effectively our students would show up on campus and then we would immediately be spending almost all of our time worrying about getting a job. So we would like to, since we're going to have people for 1 year, focus exclusively on the education and allow people to focus and to be thinking about what they need to learn to be successful in their positions without being worried about finding that next job. So it's not that we don't want people to get great jobs, and in the long run, we hope that people will have fantastic careers. That's the point of this program, either inside or outside of their institutions that they're coming from. But in the effort to make sure that we're spending as much possible of our time in the 1 year or less than 1 year that we will have students with us on campus, we want to exclusively focus on the coursework. Okay, so let me continue then with my next question, which is, what should a nomination letter include? So in the application, we have required that there be a nomination letter from a senior person at your institution. And what we want to know about in that letter, first and foremost, is what your institution thinks of your work, what you've been doing, and to the extent that they can help us to understand it, how systemic risk fits in with the mandate of their institution and what they hope that this candidate will do. In some cases, the person who's writing the nomination letter may be a more senior person in your institution who doesn't know your work as well, perhaps as your immediate supervisor. In that case, it's fine to blend both of those people into one letter that could be signed by both, or to send us two letters, or to send a short nomination letter from the senior person and a longer letter from your immediate supervisor with more details about your work. We do ask that in the nomination letter, the nominator let us know that the candidate has a job for them guaranteed when they come back from the program. This way we don't have to feel guilty at all about taking all your time on your studies while you're here and not worrying about finding a new job. And if relevant, if the institution will be sponsoring your work at Yale, it's useful for us to know that. It's not required. It's just required that they give you a job when you get back, but it's useful for us to know whether you're coming in sponsored.
And my next question would be, is there a minimum GRE or Gmat score requirement for admission? And I think on our website you noticed that one of the requirements for the application is that you submit a GRE or a Gmat score. And basically we don't have a set minimum score. What we're looking for in these scores is that, we want to make sure that you will be successful when you come to Yale to take our program and to take our courses. And basically we are gauging that from your GMAT and GRE scores and your undergrad GPA. So we don't have a minimum score requirement. We just want to make sure that anyone who comes here is successful. So that's basically.
Thank you. And I should have added last time about the nomination letter, which is the next question on my list. Who should the nomination letter come from? Does the governor of the bank need to sign it? Is it enough that the HR manager signs it? So I talked a little bit about this in my last answer. What we would say here is the part of the letter that says you have a job when you come back should be signed by somebody who has the authority to make such a representation. So in some cases, that would just be an HR manager or even your immediate supervisor. It would just be somebody who has the decision-making authority to say that. The governor of the central bank or the commissioner, if it is a different type of regulatory institution, does not need to be the one that is signing it, just somebody who can make that representation. It could be the case that the person who can make that representation is different than the person who knows your work the best, or that knows your work well enough to talk about it. And as I mentioned before, it would be fine if you wanted to give us more information about your work to have either a separate letter from somebody who knows your work very well, or to blend two people's words into one letter signed by both.
So a lot of the applicants in our program will be coming from, different countries. So it will mostly be international students. So this next question, I guess, pertains to that, is that do you have a minimum Toefl score or any other English test score requirement for the admission? I think you noticed in our list of things to submit with the application is that you don't see any Toefl score or English test score requirement in there. And we have replaced that segment with a video question within our application where you get 3 random questions, and I think you get about 60 seconds to answer 3 questions each, so 60 seconds each. We feel like that's a better way to kind of gauge what your English level, speaking level is, and just to see whether you can communicate in English and whether you can understand a class that is spoken fully in English. TOEFL scores sometimes are not a good indicator of whether your English skills are up to, the level of that we want it to be for you to be comfortable here and to be able to be comfortable in taking a class in English. So you don't have to worry about the TOEFL scores or any English test scores for this application.
Thanks. The next question is, what do we expect the size of this year's class to be? And in answering this question, I want to embed it in a broader conversation about the community that our students will be joining at the Yale School of Management. So the specific answer to this, what do we expect the size of this year's class to be? We're targeting 12 students. We're still kind of, I would say, midway through our application process, and our intention is only to admit students that meet the high bar for the Yale School of Management, and we're hoping we can get to 12. But if we don't get to 12 that can meet that very high bar in this first year, then it'll be a little bit of a smaller class. We do, however, want to emphasize that the students in the MMS systemic risk track are going to be joining a community of about 400 new master's degree students at the Yale School of Management next year, and a total of close to 800 students that will be at the school in total. The students right now are coming for a variety of programs. The largest program at the School of Management is a 2-year MBA program, which brings students from all over the world. And that has about 340 or so students. We also have about 60 students in a 1-year Masters of Advanced Management program, which enrolls students who have already obtained an MBA at one of our network institutions that are part of the Global Network for Advanced Management that Yale is a member of from all over the world, and which is a fully international program. So all of those 60 students are maybe with just a couple of exceptions, are not coming with U.S. passports, but with passports from other countries. So that's a very large large group of students that will be here, and in fact, in all of the courses, and I'll spend more time later in today's webinar talking through our courses, in all of the courses, will be open to students throughout the school. So for example, in a course that I taught this year that's going to be a required class for the MMS and systemic risk, it's a course on the global financial crisis that I teach with Secretary Tim Geithner. And we had this year about 70 students in our class from across Yale University, about 45 of them from the School of Management and 25 from other units throughout Yale University. And that course will continue to be open to everyone. So what will happen is it will be joined by the students in the MMS systemic risk track, but the other students will still be there. And that will hold for all of the courses, some of which are, I think, more narrowly tailored towards the interests of the students in the MMS. But Yale's a big place, and I expect that in every one of those courses, you'll be sharing the classroom with students in other programs, both at the School of Management and at other units around Yale. I should, in addition to that, say that only some of there's room for electives. Only some of the courses that you will be taking in our program, that students will be taking in our program, will be required classes. And in those electives, you would just be joining the other master's degree students at the school. Our program is very closely integrated with the other master's programs that are going on at the School of Management. We will share an orientation with them. You'll be, to the extent that you're in those electives or students from those classes or from those programs are in your classes. We'll be sharing study groups, social events, all of the speakers on campus, all of the other fun stuff that we do here at the Yale School of Management. So we expect that it will be this year, in our inaugural year, very important for us to demonstrate to the university and to the school that our students are really top class students. So we will be maintaining a high bar and having a relatively small class, but we do expect that the classes will feel small when they need to feel small, and you will feel part of a larger community whenever you need that.
I think my next question is, when does the class start? So when would the students have to be on campus, and what is the duration of the program? So essentially, the classes don't start until late August, but the orientation for the entire Yale School of Management starts mid-August. And I will be updating the website with the specific dates once they're out on the website for the MMS systemic risk. But we want our students, even though it's going to be a small class, we want our students to be here when the entire SOM orientation starts, so that you feel like you're being integrated into our community from start on. And then we also have our other students from different programs know that our students are here and know that our students are part of the Yale SOM. So there is a 2-week orientation process where it's filled with activities and team building exercises. I think they have had great reviews, and there's a lot of events where we'll get to know the students in the different programs, and you'll get to actually work with them for the 2 weeks. So that's, I think, mid-August would be the estimate of when you would have to be here. And then I think the graduation is going to be in June sometime. I think so it will be from August to June where you will be in New Haven.
So I now have a set of questions about academics, and I thought that before going into the specifics of those questions, I would give an overview, and a lot of the information in this overview is, of course, available on our website. But let me give that verbally now, and also when I'm doing that, give people an opportunity. If you have specific questions, please do post them about the academic requirements or any of the logic of why we put the program together the way we have. So let me start with that overview, and then I can answer a few specific questions interspersed with some answers that June will give as well. So overall for the year, what we do is we have people come to campus in August, as June mentioned, and go through some orientation activities that include some team-based learning classes that have been originated and developed at Yale for our MBA program, which we think are fantastic, which we're going to have our MMS systemic risk students do as well. And then in the fall semester, there are 3 required classes. The first required class is the Global Financial Crisis class that I mentioned earlier, which is taught by myself and by Secretary Tim Geithner, where we go over what happened during the financial crisis, the build up to the crisis, what the mechanisms were whereby the crisis was propagated around the world, what some of the methods were used to fight the crisis, and some of the hangover and continuing fragility that existed and continues to exist to this day. So that's a full semester course in the fall. Also in the fall is a course on comparative financial regulation, which is going to focus specifically on the systemic risk aspects of comparative financial regulation in countries and regions throughout the world. And that course is going to be co-taught by my colleague, Junri, and by another member of our team at the Yale Program on Financial Stability, Christian McNamara. Both June and Christian are legal scholars coming from the law side of the world, educated just up the road at Harvard Law School, which we don't talk about Harvard too much here. And they'll be doing this course. The wonderful thing is that in the past few years since the financial crisis, there have been some excellent legal treatises that have been written that just didn't exist before, that talk about financial regulation focused on systemic risk from a comparative standpoint. And so we're going to be using these texts in this full semester course and really giving people a sense for how different countries are dealing with the regulatory structure in this post-global financial crisis world. So that's the second required class. The third required class is part of a sequence. In the first semester, the sequence is on monetary economics and policy. And this is I would say, relatively standard course that you would see in other programs that, in fact, we have already at Yale SOM. So the global financial crisis already was taught this year. The monetary economics and policy course was already taught this year. This year at Yale, it was taught by William English, who is on leave from the Federal Reserve in Washington, where he was most recently the director of the Monetary Affairs Division. And the students have given rave reviews to the course, since we have a very senior central banker who was responsible for these things. And we're trying to persuade Bill to stay with us and continue teaching this class. But and we'll know that pretty soon, whether we've succeeded in persuading him. If we do not succeed in persuading him, we will persuade somebody else who also has extensive experience in the senior levels of a central bank. So those are the required courses in the first semester. There is also a year-long Thesis Symposium, colloquium course, which I'll talk about a little bit later, which people will take. And then there is an additional elective that people will take in the fall. And we are requiring that among the electives that people take are something in economics and finance and something in statistics or econometrics. In both of those areas, there's a wide range of courses throughout the university. We know that people will come in with very different backgrounds. There will be some people who have very extensive backgrounds in these areas, some people less so. And so rather than specify a specific course that everybody needs to take, we're just going to give you a wide menu of courses from throughout the university that you can choose from. In the spring, these sequences continue. So the continuation of the monetary economics and policy course is a course on central banking. And now, instead of kind of learning in general about monetary economics, this is going to get down to the nitty-gritty of central bank operations. So this goes not just into exactly how interest rates are set and how they think about the money supply, but into details such as how the payment system is governed and how exactly decisions get made within the bank, within central banks, based on different types of institutional and legal structures. And this is a course, once again, that is being taught this year at Yale SOM by Professor Bill English, and either Professor English will be around to teach it next year, or somebody else with significant experience at senior levels within a central bank will do that. The continuation course from the Global Financial Crisis class is a course called Capital Markets, which is a very general name for really what is a broad course in thinking about financial intermediation. And this course is taught by Gary Gorton. Gary is a faculty member here in the finance group at the School of Management. He's been teaching a course with this title or a similar title for about 15 years. It's morphed over time. He previously was at the Wharton School at the University of Pennsylvania, where he taught a similar course. Since he's come here, the course has taken on a very significant financial crisis tinge to it. Gary, as you may know, is one of the world's leading experts on financial crises, and one of the most highly cited authors on the topics of financial crises. And in his capital markets class, he really gets very much into the details of some of the types of financial innovation that are part and parcel of the financial system necessary for growth of the economy, but also that can lead to fragility. So there's some very important units on derivatives, some very important units that he covers on securitization, pretty much anything that can be bought and sold in markets is covered in the class, with a very, very small component that's covering the stock market. Gary thinks that the stock market is not nearly as interesting to cover as all of the various fixed income and derivative and securitization markets, especially for understanding financial stability. So that's where his focus is. And in that class, you'll actually go and read carefully the legal documents around securitization and understand why it works the way it does, why it's set up the way it does, and what the strengths and weaknesses are. So that's also a full semester spring course. That's a course that's been at Yale SOM for many years and is quite popular with our students. So you'll be joining other master's degree students in other master's degree programs at Yale. The third course is the continuation of the financial regulations sequence, and this is a course on macroprudential policy. So now we will move from the first semester course that was taught by June and Christian, where we're really giving you what the rules are all over the world, to the second semester, where it's going to be about exactly what tools are used, how are stress tests actually performed, what are the models underneath them look like, how do we come up with a countercyclical capital buffer, what types of monitoring of systemic risk are done by different banks and are done by different banks, by different central banks and regulatory authorities, depending on the type of economy that you have. So this course is going to be currently, we are planning to have this course taught by two people. There's one instructor who's at Yale, and that is Sigga Benediktsdottir. And Sigga was most recently the director of financial stability, the head of financial stability at the Central Bank of Iceland. And in that role was one of the main players in the whole Scandinavian financial stability system and the leaders of that group. And Sigga has written extensively on this particular topic, and just months ago was in charge of figuring out answers to these questions. So we're delighted to have her. She's actually back at Yale. She taught at Yale for many years before she went off to the Central Bank of Iceland to do that work, and is now back and will be teaching part of this course. And we have one other instructor, and the specific person is not yet confirmed, but I will tell you that it is a senior member of the Federal Reserve Board of New York, tasked with similar types of roles. that SIGA had at the Central Bank of Iceland. And we'll be able to confirm the teachers of all of these different courses but probably by the end of March. So that'll all be up on our website. So those are the required classes. There's also room for the Thesis Symposium, which I promise I'll come back to a little bit later, and another elective course in the spring. So that's kind of the overall. Now, there were questions. We got some questions about who would be teaching these various courses. So I just gave you, in some cases we know who all of the teachers are. In some cases we know who some of them are, such as in the Macroprudential Tools course. And we will be, the full list of instructors should be up on the website, I would say, by the end of March.
My next question is, would I be able to take classes all over Yale? And as Andrew mentioned briefly that you will be. The answer basically is yes. I think there are 3 electives that you need to take that would be in statistics, economics, and finance. So we understand a lot of people are coming from different backgrounds with different education. So we would like you to pick and choose which kind of these elective courses that you would like to take. So all over university, there will be different levels provided that fall under these 3 electives. So you are welcome to take them. We will be happy to assist you in signing up for these classes, making sure you know the process on how to sign up for these classes, because it's a little bit different from how you sign up for the School of Management classes. So, you will have a wide variety of classes to choose from that's provided all over university.
Thank you. Okay, as promised, I'll talk a little bit about the Thesis Symposium, which is a combination of a few different things. So the Thesis Symposium will meet throughout the year. So we will start right after orientation is done, and we will meet throughout the year. And it culminates in the presentation of a specific project. And that project could be a standard research project that would look like the types of papers that are published by central banks. It could be something that was more of a straight policy piece that was explaining how a policy worked or should be designed or giving a framework for design. It could be a review, so the type of work that might be given to you that you might be tasked with, such as tell us something about how various countries in the world are organizing their stress tests. Just sort of review that and give a summary paper or memo to your boss. So that would be an example. You could also work on a specific case study. So the case study could be on some policy done by a central bank or other regulatory institution or fiscal authority, either to try to to monitor systemic risk or to prevent the buildup of systemic risk, or some type of policy that would prevent you would use as an intervention actually in a crisis. So all of those would be possible, and the intention is over the first semester, students would explore various different ideas, talk to faculty about it, start working on it, and have something that they were ready to present by the end of the spring semester. Some people will come, and we've had students like this in other master's programs at Yale do this, will come with a idea coming from their home institution where they've been asked, hey, could you work on this over the course of the year? And that would be fine as well. We intend to be quite flexible about these projects. We just want to see that it represents a significant body of work, and that body of work is related to the topic of systemic risk that we cover in our program. Now, the Thesis Symposium won't just be about the research side, a lot of which will be going on behind the scenes, but we'll also have speakers, especially in the fall semester, where students don't yet have that much done on their work and won't have very much to present. We will be having speakers coming in to talk about various issues within systemic risk, and sometimes to talk about various different types of research projects that are going on. And what we are building now is trying to look at, as we get a group of students that come in and we know what the interests are of our students, we're going to look to build a list of speakers for the symposium that will cover any special interests that our students have that we do not believe we're covering as thoroughly as we want to in our other coursework. So, for example, if we end up this year with a large portion of our class coming from Asia, we recognize that a lot of our faculty at Yale don't have the same deep experience in Asia as some of our students would like. We certainly have some, but we recognize that we're not coming from Asia. And so then we would build a group of symposium speakers who would bring more of that expertise to bear. Similarly, if we had students coming in, a large number of students that were coming in from banking regulatory agencies rather than central banks, then we would bring in speakers, since our faculty this year aren't going to have people who are specifically coming from bank regulation. We would bring in more speakers from the bank regulatory world, particularly the large bank regulatory world. So essentially the makeup of the speakers in the Thesis Symposium, I think, are going to depend on where we really want to add depth to what we're doing over the course of the year. But the general idea is it's going to be current or very recent senior office holders at central banks and other major regulatory agencies. We will also have some folks from the private sector come as well. Private sector guest speakers are very well represented at the Yale School of Management as it is, so that and all of those seminars and talks will be open to students in our program. So we feel that we should cover the things that our other master's degree programs won't cover as well. So we're likely to bring in more senior folks from the regulatory and central banking world. In the spring semester, we probably will have a larger fraction of the meetings dedicated towards students presenting their work in progress and getting comments on it. But even then, most of the work on your thesis project will take place out of class, and everybody will have an advisor, either myself or June or one of the other faculty members in our program, or in some cases, if you're working on some very specialized topic where there's an expert elsewhere at Yale, we have some very, very deep content expertise, for example, at the Yale Law School, that some people may want to tap. Then we can send you elsewhere in the University, the Law School, or the Economics Department, for example.
And my next question is the program full-time, and is there an option to do part-time? So for now, we expect our class size to be very small, and it's just prone. It's easier to build community, to get to know each other. If it's full-time, everyone's here, especially since most of our students will be from different countries. We would like them to be here for a year, just have a year-long intensive course, get to know each other, and then go back to different countries and, kind of have that community with them, so that when they're advancing in their career and when they need cooperation with different countries and financial stability functions, you will have that connection. And having part-time student is not really easy for us to facilitate that kind of community building. But for now, we're focusing just on the full-time program.